We've been talking about expectations, and this week we're going to talk about exceeding expectations with our clients. Hi, I'm Kathleen Lawson, and as a business strategist, I work with female service-based business owners, helping them put the strategy, structure, and routines in place so they can execute on their big goals. And when we started talking about expectations, I immediately thought of one of my favorite books, which is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And then I knew I had to talk about this with Dani Whitestone. So Dani, thank you for coming here today and talking with me about this topic.
Thank you so much for having me, which I know we'll get into, but it's like my absolute favorite thing to talk about forever. So I'm a business coach and I specialize in this customer experience. And then once Unreasonable Hospitality came on the scene and they had a certification, I read that, yep, this is my thing. And I went all in. And like you, I help service-based businesses or businesses who want to do better with their service really focus on that customer experience, because so many business owners think it's about get more leads without putting enough care on that journey and that experience that leads go into. So because like people are spending like so much money and so much time to get the leads, but if you don't optimize that experience and exceed those expectations, like you talked about, then you're just like wasting time and money. So spend the time there so that you can convert more of the leads that you do have. And of course, they're going to love you so much that then they spend time and refer people to you. So you create this beautiful ecosystem that just makes everything in life so much easier because you're making money with working less hard.
Nice. Well, and I think that's everybody's goal, right?
Seriously.
So this book, which you and I kind of read together, and back when we both first read it, so the author was the owner of a restaurant, fine dining restaurant, and this book was about their journey to, well, they had been part of a competition for the top 50 restaurants in the world, and they got named to that, and they were very excited, and they went to this awards night, and they ended up number 50. So although it was very exciting that they were in the top 50, they were number 50. And so their goal was to rise up in the rankings, and where most restaurants, when they're trying to improve things, focus on the food, these guys focused on the service and the hospitality. And so he wrote this whole book, and it's a really great read because there's so many stories and they go through, everything that they did. But and even though it was about restaurants, you can clearly apply it to any kind of business. And so, you and I work with the same kind of business owners. So we're talking about small business owners. I tend to work with a lot of solopreneurs. And so if the small business owner, the service-based business owner says, all right, you know what, I want to focus on delighting my clients, and they want to think about this, where do they start? What was the first thing that you would say they should do?
The first thing I would say they do is to spend some time, and you can make it fun, you can make it crafty, like get a big thing of paper or Post-it notes and some markers, and really just start map out the customer, just map it out so you can see it, so that you can just map out the touch points from when they first hit maybe your ad on social media or wherever that awareness is, to their first interaction with you, and to up and through purchase and beyond, and just look and see what that looks like. And because you're going to see like, oh, wow, there's a gap here, or I can do better here. And there's a whole system behind it. But that's where I would start, is just mapping out that customer journey so that you can see it and you can analyze it and take action on it.
And optimize it. Yeah. I love that, because I feel like so often when business owners, they start a business and they very often, kind of wing all of that. And so they're making decisions in the moment. And when you have a chance to actually map it out, then you can be so much more strategic and thoughtful, because it's not just your side, like your operations. And so often people do approach this from an operational point of view. So they're looking at like, how can I streamline this and save myself time? But what we're talking about here is like the flip side of that, which is, how do I want to show up for my clients, and how can I make that a good experience for them? So, you're streamlining it on your side, but you're trying to make a better experience on their side. And going through this, like you said, it gives you a chance to be really thoughtful and strategic about what you want to happen.
Absolutely, because it's intent, and everything happens great when we give things energy, intent, and energy. Whether you're trying to grow a plant, or a pet or a relationship, you can systematize it But even if you systematize to optimize, you don't have to take away, it doesn't have to take away from going fast and being efficient. Because, for example, I give this example a lot when I'm working with clients or working in a workshop, is maybe after a purchase, they get a thank you email. Like, well, that's great, but okay, maybe you could record a video. It doesn't even have to be an individual video. It could just be like, wow, awesome. Hey, Kathleen, I'm so glad that we're going to be working together. Oh, awesome. You bought this candle, whatever it is, even just a recording. So instead of like a generic, like, thank you for your purchase email, maybe it's just there's even like a link in there that just gives them a little bit more of a personal experience and elevates it. But it's still systematized. It's still optimized, but it just a little bit, that person receiving it just gets another hit of you being excited, being happy for them. And it creates more of that. Elevating, we're talking from elevating from service. Thank you email. Okay, they got my money. I'm going to get my product, to hospitality. Oh, wow. They want to hear how I like this. I like the product I'm about to get. And they took the time to send me a message that even if it's not like personalized to them, it still can feel personal.
Right. So, all right. So like that example, a video, that doesn't really cost you anything. So I think there's examples here that we could talk about. And when we're talking about the very beginning of the process, like somebody onboarding a client, there's a lot of opportunity around gift giving there. And a lot of people do put together things like that. So can you talk a little bit about like what about the kind of the gift idea, as well as, things that you can do that aren't going to cost you a lot of extra resources?
Absolutely. So let me talk a little bit about gift giving, because it's a mistake that can happen. One mistake that a lot of businesses can make, and they think they're doing something nice, is sending somebody a whole bunch of swag, like with their logo all over it. Will Guidara has this great story about how he talked about it, and maybe it was a TED Talk or a different interview, but he talked about how he was brought to do this talk, and this company was so excited that they gave him this giant gift bag full of like really high-end stuff, like headphones and everything, but the logo was blasted all over everything. And he kind of turned it around and said, like, this is great. Like, I really appreciate the gesture. However, like, what would be like if I gave you a present and it had like my name on every single thing? So not that I don't think that like swag and company logo stuff can't be a really good gift. However, mix it in with something that is more, maybe a little bit more intentional. And I'll give an example of a company. I help another company, and they wanted to do something special for their clients. It's actually a company that I partially own, and we were brainstorming some ideas. And I said, hey guys, let's, instead of just giving like a Dunkin' Donuts gift card, have someone call the assistant of the people that we work with, and just say, hey, or even, or ask them, said, hey, I'm going to be in your area or whatever. And like, what would be a good restaurant that you recommended? Like, everyone wrote back, because everyone wants to talk about their favorite restaurant. So what we did instead of like that, a generic thing, which is still nice, but instead of getting that generic like Dunkin' Donuts gift card, they got a gift certificate to their favorite restaurant that they recommended that we attend. So
and you know what? As the recipient of a gift just like that, I can say that's much appreciated. Someone who I had referred a client that turned into a very large contract wanted to send me a referral gift, and same thing, called and said, what's a restaurant? Actually, the way they phrased it was, what's a restaurant you've always wanted to go to and maybe you haven't? And you and I both have the same issue. We're gluten-free. And so there's, trying to find, good gluten-free options. And there is a restaurant here in Boston that I've always wanted to try that I've never been to. And so I mentioned that, and that was the gift card that got sent. And it was such a, special gift, and it was great. And and not that I don't appreciate the Starbucks gift cards too, because I do love those.
Me too.
It's really personal and was really nice.
Yeah. Just a little bit more intense, when you can put it in there, creates a, appreciated service level, nice experience too, like one that you'll remember and talk about. on podcasts.
Right. Yeah. Right. So do you think that when you're onboarding someone, do you think like that is that the time to do something like that? Do you do it at the end of an engagement? Do you need to do that? Like, what are your thoughts around like the client gift, like, all the way around?
Let's see, as I'm thinking about this now, I love setting an intent. I love setting a tone for the engagement. First, like a first date, that kind of impression, something that sets something that sets the tone. So if you're going to send something, I don't think there's ever a wrong time to send something nice to somebody, or maybe you do something nice in the beginning and nice at the beginning and nice at the end. But I do love something that like sets the tone and the expectation in the beginning of maybe contract signed or something like that. Maybe I'll change my mind on that, but I think I like that because it sets the tone. Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it.
Now that you think about it. So somebody recently said to me who was working on their gift giving strategy, and they were thinking about something that the business owner would need and kind of related to the service that they provide. And I thought that was, a nice touch too. So it's something that all business owners could use, something like that. So
One thing I can add to that now that I'm thinking about it is one company I work with, they have a really long sales cycle because it's really complicated. It has to do with a lot of federal and state regulations with hazardous waste. And it's like the beginning, it's a kickoff or whatever. However, like the process is it can be kind of arduous. So we send something kind of like at that midpoint of it because it's just kind of tedious and it can be annoying to something to kind of lift the mood and give a boost. So really I would take a look at the industry in terms of like where could this have some maximum input, maximum boost. So in that particular company, we send that when we need to infuse a little energy because it's like we can see the finish line. It's coming here. Have a brownie.
Right. So
We're
like
gonna get there.
At a particular milestone in the process. One of the things thinking about, because I'm all about like, let's make this efficient and easy and thinking about systems, systemizing things. So, but at the same time, one of the things that Will Gujar talks about in the book a lot is, personalizing and listening for the people and the things that are important to them and making people feel seen. So it's almost like you say, yes, I'm going to do this thing at this point, but what the thing is maybe is different depending on the client and what would be appreciated by them and what's going to make them feel seen. Is that like, would you look at it that way?
That is ideal. However, I would recommend is that create a baseline. So if you create a baseline of systemization, and if you know that is like a reoccurring thing, like an onboarding or an exiting, or like we talked about, if we need a little bit of a boost in the middle of the engagement or something like that, is I would rather see something that is something is standardized and happen versus something like super customized and you set the bar so high that it just doesn't happen, or like, oh my God, I have no idea what to send. And you know what? Oh, my kid just walked into the wall. Now I need to go get like a Band-Aid. Someone's bleeding, so like, and then it's closed and it's forgotten. And also kind of matching that is, there's so many ways. There's so many like automated gift. I have to look at so I can have a go-to list. But there's so many like automated like gift things now. Whether it's crazy in terms of what you can do. Whether it's custom mugs that get sent out. It's just what's available right now to help systematize things. Even gift certificates. So I would say if you know you don't have the bandwidth, or you have the client experience, it's like it's a really, really, really high ticket. Like I would say, take the effort because you're probably working with fewer clients. But I would say systemization so that it happens, and then like get fancy later is kind of my
Right.
thoughts on that.
Good point. And you know what? And if you are going to get help on that, the people that have the gift companies, they will do that for you. You send them the name and address, and you kind of set what the system is, and they'll send the things out, whatever they
Yes.
are.
Yeah, get the help. Definitely get the help if you need it, because it's available now more than ever.
Right. So, all right. So if you're trying to delight your clients and kind of raise all of this, then what about like tracking specific information about the client? Like it feels like that's important to know things about like their family, their hobbies, like
Mhm.
important things going on in their life. So, what do you think about that? And do you have like a way that you do that, or just places that you keep that information, or?
Totally. So, and I know this will be right in your wheelhouse working, especially with solopreneurs, is needs. So we talk about a CRM. It's a customer relations management system. There's lots of different softwares out there now. However, it could even just be, you can even just do it in like Google, just as long as it's someplace
Yeah.
under their contacts, because you can put under under wherever you want to hold your contacts. There's a note section, and in some of the systems, it does ask for like birthdays and
Yeah.
children's names, but just stick that information just somewhere in the notes, because even if you, especially if it's maybe you had a discovery call, and you follow up for a time, and then things go quiet, like it can, but they ring you up 8 months later, and you're like, oh, hey, I wanted to revisit this again. And then you get to like cheat sheet it in terms of like, oh, okay, they got a new puppy. Like, how's it dog?
Yeah.
It's not being creepy about it. It's, being caring, and it shows a connection and level of care that you put into that, discovery call. And because you can probably think of times like this when like people just like remember like different random things in your life, but it really makes
Yeah.
a difference. I think we talked about this a few days ago in terms of, because both of our kids are doing
Right.
track.
Yep. Yep. Well,
Yeah,
that makes me think too about like social media. Like if you follow people on social media, you get so many cues about things that are going on in their life that you can, comment on or talk about or ask them, hey, how was your trip to Italy or whatever? Just, that you're paying attention to them and that you see what they've got going on and that you make the effort to reach out about things like that.
absolutely. It's caring, and people caring for each other, and it can be, that can be a void that exists in the world, as everyone's just so busy like kind of going through their day, that it doesn't really matter where the caring comes from. It's we I can think of it like as a story of just, in Dunkin', even in line at a coffee shop or a restaurant, like someone just doing that extra little bit of caring just goes so far.
Right. Right. So we talked about gifts. What about some of the other like free things that you could do? You mentioned like a video. So that could be sort of sent anytime or like a recorded message, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Just anything. It's really nice when you get when you get your journey, all that mapped out, and you look at things, because it's hard to like just kind of have this amorphous thing in your head, the customer journey. But when you see it on paper and
Yeah.
mapped out, and that's what we do in like the unreasonable hospitality workshops and that I
Yeah.
that I host, and you see it, and then you get to analyze like each one, like and isolate it, like that email. And you mentioned onboarding a couple of times, and whether you have an online experience or you have a physical experience, you have a physical place, like look at, in terms of optimizing something that's easy. Is I worked with one client, and I said, like, what's it like when people like walk through the door?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. This was a financial planner. And they said, oh, okay, well, I have to stand up because I can't really see them because we have this object in the way. I'm like, okay, and tell me more. I'm like, what's the ambiance? Like, what's behind you? Like, oh, a copy machine and a fax machine. I'm like, okay. And we're in we're in a financial environment where stresses might be a little bit higher. So I said, okay, well, tell me about, okay, so we've talked about what it's like when people come through, which has been like that for years. So everyone's used to it. Like, what's it like when you walk into a spa? They're like,
Mm.
oh, it's like, it's peaceful, and I
Yeah.
get greeted, and
Smells good.
it smells good, and there's a fountain. I said, Yeah. And again, even just drawing that contrast. So, I think the day, the day they got back, like the fax machine was moved, the copy machine was moved, the object was moved. And again, because we talked about like those first impressions, like what feels, what feels better, the walking into a spa versus like walking into an environment that could be more like the spa with just a
Right.
little bit of intent and care and just moving some
Right.
equipment around.
Right. And I think like the online version of that is the, kind of going above and beyond in terms of information and expectations and, communication. And so that, you don't want a client to be like, yeah, well, I'm not exactly sure where we are. I haven't heard from them, this week, but, to know like, this is what we're doing. This is what's next. Here's, above and beyond communication and information so that they feel taken care of and that everything's, right on track. And
yes, taken care of. And that goes so far, not just because of like it's good, it's care, but we're all trying to save calories in our brain. And so basically we're trying to, there's enough thinking that goes along with a purchase decision, especially if they're working with a coach, just trying to, in terms of being taken care of, like when you walk into, I don't know, and I'm trying to think of a good analogy here, but you're walking into an experience where you're told what to expect, what's going on. You don't have to spend all the mental calories of trying to figure it out yourself. You're put through it, so it builds trust and it lowers your stress level, because like walking into a party where you're greeted like, oh, absolutely, let me get your coat. Okay, here, here where the drinks are, here where the snacks are, this is where the bathroom, like, okay, great. And oh, by the way, here's Mindy. Let me introduce you guys. You guys are both in real estate. Like that's an experience versus, ding dong, nothing. You hear a bunch of people going, and you like walk in,
everyone's
you're like,
out back.
Exactly. So that's the kind of experience, even online, that we're trying to cultivate, that really being that really good host or hostess to help bring people through your experience so they don't have to figure it out on their own, because people start figuring things out on their own, especially if they haven't bought yet. Like they're gone. They're like, this isn't for me. This is just too much. I'll come back to it.
Right. Right. Okay. So what about the idea? What do you think of this idea? How about a kind of create a signature thing that's like that you do, something about, you that's, that you do for your clients?
I like it. I like it. And I like it. One of the things that I've kind of stumbled on is people in my circle tend to get sparkle maple syrup. I have a bottle over there. It's so cool. It's it's maple syrup. It's made by a company near me, and it's maple syrup, and it has like edible sparkles mixed into it. So it's just in terms of, I wouldn't say it's a signature thing for me yet, but it's just one of those things that it's different. People know I'm up in Vermont, though I try to, again, customize it to them, but it's just a little thing that I can do to surprise and delight people, because and people play with it. It's just one of those things that has kind of been a standout. And when I went to, because I'm in that Business Made Simple story brand community, like when I went down to Nashville, and wonderfully, I got to be a speaker there and be in that amazing environment with all those great coaches. Like I brought these mini bottles of sparkle syrup. So I ended up being the sparkle syrup lady in terms of.
Well, what's nice about that too, is that because it's maple syrup and it's from Vermont, like it adds to your branding. So that's really nice thing. I've never seen sparkle syrup, but last year someone did send me some infused maple syrup, and it was from Vermont, and I can't remember the company name now, but it had a couple little bottles, and one was like bourbon infused, and one was like, I forget all of the different infused syrups, but oh my gosh, they were good.
That's probably Run Amok. It's probably the one that we use.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's it. That's the name.
I'm happy to plug them because I love them. So,
yeah.
So in terms of a signature thing, or could it be, it could even be, you go out for ice cream or something like that.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Yeah, I saw an example which I really loved.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Free option, which was a video message at the end of the engagement, kind of like a little like wrap up and debrief, and it was great working with you, but in a video form. And I thought, something that the client could save, and I thought that was a nice little touch as well.
I like that. I like that as a touch as well. And also, if you use that and it reinforces and if even better, if it reinforces and highlights the progress that they made through working with
Yeah.
you, because that's one thing when you start an engagement with a coach, you're here and you finish here with I've accomplished all these things. But especially as we know, working with business owners, solopreneurs, we never give each other enough credit. We never,
No.
especially for the things that we accomplish, the things that we do, and we get so much done we forget like where we
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
So I love
Absolutely.
that. So I
Yeah.
love that video in terms of in the highlighting highlighting the
Yeah.
progress
Yeah, like
and
we've
highlighting
done
the
this and this and this, and you've, this is where you were and this is where you are. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, and when you're on video, I mean, that's more personal than something written for sure, because they see you, they hear you.
Exactly. It hits all those. They see you. They see you. Body language is the biggest way that we communicate. So like number one, and tone comes next. So instead of just reading it, they can hear all your, they hear your inflections. They can hear the excitement. In addition to the body language, the body language, like up here, exciting body language. So, and you can hear the tone and the inflections, and the words are actually have the least amount of impact in terms of communication. So does hit all those points.
Wow, that's interesting. Words are the last.
I'm a giant body language nerd.
I know. We read some body language books together too. So Dani and I did book club together. So
We did. I might have to bring back book club. It's on hiatus for the summer.
yes, we'll have to bring that back in the fall. Okay, so we've talked about mapping out the client journey so that we can see all the touch points and really optimize on those and think about not just kind of what we need on our side, but more so like in this context, like what's going to show the client, a great experience, how we're going to make it a great experience for them. And we talked about a repeatable system so that we can manage it well. We talked about tracking information so that we can always, we can use that as we're working and talking with our clients. We've talked about gifts. We've talked about like having a signature thing. And when we talked about both like kind of paid gifts, and we've talked about some free options. So what else? What are we missing? What else is there?
There's a bunch of different ways that you can measure customer satisfaction and how the experience is working with people. And to start like very simply is I would do some sort of Google form or some sort of Jot form or something like that at some point in time that makes sense for your customer experience. Do like a quick touch point of, how are things going? I think I'm going to actually do a whole talk around this because you can do a whole bunch of stuff, but basically that especially that index score is like, would you recommend me to somebody else? Like 10, great, like 5, like, oh, something I need to look in, I need to look at something here. So in terms of the customer experience, I would say if you don't have a systemized way to have a quick touch check-in, not a long, huge survey. No one appreciates that. No one wants this. Is going to take you 20 minutes. No, just a couple of questions, just a touch, just as a touch point.
You're saying doing this kind of in the middle of the engagement, because I know a lot of people do the feedback at the end and, part of the offboarding. So you're saying like midway, you check in on the process.
Yeah, depending on your business model, check in midway during your process, because if something is going wrong, you want to know it as soon as possible. If it hasn't already been communicated, again, depending on your business. So I wouldn't wait until like we're at the end of the experience to know there's a problem. I would prompt it. You can do it both, but I would put something, just a quick check-in somewhere in the middle of your process, or again, depending on your process, wherever you think that would be like a tricky point. It could be like 25% of the way in. As we know with like, hiring a business coach, it can get overwhelming. You manage it and everything, but growth can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, checking that, and you could even pair that with putting that up front with like, hey, growth isn't always easy, but you're doing a great job. Here's a quick little, a 2-3 question check-in just to see how, just to do a pulse check of how we're doing. Yes. And when you're measuring, you don't have to, but some people say like, oh, but I work with, you can't really put like my results on a 1 to 10 scale because it's not something tangible, it's emotional. Well, then you ask, like, feeling. I'm like, well, like, how does, how are you feeling? And you put that on a scale of 1 to 10 versus you can make you can make the intangibles like tangible.
Right. But I think you can also address the process. Like,
Yeah.
we're meeting, once a week for this, and these are the things we're doing like this, how is the process working? Because I find that
Yes.
that's something that you could get feedback on and can be optimized and improved, and for sure.
Absolutely. Especially if you understand your customer journey, you understand what customers go through at, again, it's part of that mapping process, and the system that we have behind this is like, okay, we know that this is a struggle point. So
Yeah.
what can you do to anticipate, to acknowledge
Yeah.
that? I had a software company, and like, that's how I know this stuff works, is like,
Yeah.
we were a bunch of crazy people and we started this software company. It was a great ride. It was acquired, the whole thing. But one of the things we got hugely right was that customer experience. And we didn't have a huge staff. So I would maniacally say, okay, for the calls that were incoming that were taking up the bandwidth of everybody in the office, like what are the problems? So
Yeah.
I would proactively, okay, I know that they have this problem at like week 2. And what, not really a problem, it's more like an education. So they would get an automated email that would go out saying, hey, by the way, there's this cool button that you probably don't know you have that
Yeah.
you're going to call me about in like 3 days, and and then get all annoyed because you're going to fight with this for 2 hours. You're going to fight with this on your own for 2 hours. Then you're going to call us mad. And then we're just going to say, oh, it's a button that's staring at you. And then they're going to feel stupid. I'm like, how about they just get a little video? So in terms of anticipating,
Yeah.
anticipating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done the same thing. Like, I've worked with so many clients who had same thing. It's like, what are the problems as you go along on it? And when you just said that, you made me think of, I've worked with a lot of social media and marketing strategists. And it's always about the approval process, how do you get the feedback, and, people taking a long time to get back to them, when they need all the information to keep moving, or interior designers. I work with a lot of interior designers too. And very often they have a hard time getting, approvals back from people. So that's, a pain point in the process that we're always trying to figure out, what's the best way to get the information to the client and make it easy for them to get it back. And how do you set the boundaries, and all those things, but to make it very positive and good. But yeah, working through where are the sticky points in the process.
I hear that and I'm just like, oh, I want to map it out and play with that. We could do so much with that.
Yeah. Some measurement. What else? Anything else that we should touch on?
I just want to highlight about how profitable it is. 86%. If people have a great customer experience, people are willing to pay. Where's my stat? I have so many stats and I got to memorize it. Where's my favorite one? So that 86% of people are willing to pay more for a great customer experience.
86% of people will pay more.
Yes, for a great customer experience.
Yeah, I totally believe that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because we do it all the time.
Yeah.
Or we drive that little extra further to go to that auto shop that we drive, we'll drive 10 miles out of our way. That's gas money. That's
Well,
time.
I think about all the places that I absolutely will not go. I mean, stores, restaurants, whatever, not going in there.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are so many statistics that back up why this is. First of all, it's being a great human being. You're caring about people because you do as a business owner. So it's it's a win for your client. It's a win for you. And it's profitable. It's a growth strategy. It's not just a nice thing. It is a powerful growth strategy in your business.
Yeah.
And to find those experiences so you can stand out, so people do refer you and they stick with you for longer, and or repeat and
Or
coming
come back.
back.
Yeah.
Exactly, like you said, those places I will not go to. So you find the place and you're willing to stick with them, and trying something new, you're like, I don't know.
Not when I can go back here and they're happy to see me, and I always get a little extra, and it just feels good. And and it's a great feeling to be happy to give somebody your money because you love the service and you love what's happening there.
Yeah, it's the best. It's a fantastic growth strategy, and it's so much fun to help help focus on that. So definitely, I just want to drive that home that it is profitable. It
There
is
you
so
go.
profitable.
There you go. So then our action item for people is really to start with mapping out their client journey. So and like you said, and it's funny because you said the big piece of paper and the colored pens, and I'm all about that. There's nothing I love more than sitting on the floor with my colored pens and my flip chart and drawing something out. But we start from where the client comes in and every step along the way until the engagement is over. And then we're going to look at each step and optimize it. And it definitely helps to have somebody walk you through it. It's very hard, very often, to do it yourself because you're too close, you don't see the things, and you kind of need somebody to ask you all the questions, somebody that's used to looking at that and can point all the things out. So
Absolutely. It's hard to see ourselves objectively sometimes. And if people want to kind of get a jump start on this, on my website, they can go and they can download this People First Profits Follow guide, and it helps walk them through parts of this system so that they can start applying this to their business.
Awesome. So Dani's website should be in the notes below. So Dani, thank you again for being here and for talking about unreasonable hospitality and all of this about exceeding client expectations. So this was a great conversation, and I really appreciate you, and I appreciate you being here and your time and your expertise.
You are so welcome. Again, my favorite thing in the world to talk about. So thank you so much for letting me geek out on unreasonable hospitality and customer experience. It's been awesome. Kathleen, you're amazing. Thank you so much.